I'm going to be doing a lot more live videos with you guys. This is a part two on the last video I did on forgiveness um, without acceptance, or when we try to settle for a place of I'm going to forgive and let go, but next week it's right back there again. And why is that? And it's because of the fact that if forgiveness is not really the result of you understanding how complete and how safe and how accepted you are, then it is just another facade, another trick, another self manipulation, another repression, another denial. And it's just going to keep popping back up. And so we get into this addiction of forgiving others, but it's really not forgiving. It's simply staying in the cycle of denying our bitterness to feel like we are still being integrous within ourselves to forgive, but we're not accepting ourselves in the midst of that. It just keeps us in a vicious cycle. And so this is what we talked about on a short video on this last one I did. Now on this one here, and forgive me, I'm probably going to sneeze here in a minute. I'm just waiting for it to surface. I had somebody reach out and ask me to do a part two, and that this would be connected to a question. And the question was, how do you, and my question is, knowing forgiveness as a choice, and when does our feelings catch up to choices that we make when the person you are choosing to forgive continues to be disrespectful? It's hard when it's a family member that you have to deal with often. So in other words, it was that question, and part of it was the fact that it was about, I guess I only put down that aspect, but anyway, the question in full is basically, how do I deal with being married to or living with a narcissist, and how far do I go with that when it comes to how do I do the whole forgiveness and acceptance thing in the midst of constantly being disrespected? And here's what I would say to that. Okay, first and foremost, and again, this might not feel like the right answer, but I'm going to tell you where I'm at with this and what I would do. You got to ask yourself, what is serving you to be with a narcissist? And I know that's a hard thing. Now, doesn't mean we're not looking for everybody's perfect. I mean, if you're out there trying to find the perfect mate or the perfect spouse, and you have these high performance-based expectations, you can forget about that. Okay. Good to see everyone coming on. But if you're dealing with somebody that's narcissistic, you got to ask yourself, what drew you into the relationship to submit to that disrespect? How much of that is a part of your own self-disrespect? Okay. And so it is, interesting. Well, slingshot slinger, I'm sorry that your wife pooped in your cereal. What should you do? Well, I would say, it all depends on how much fiber she had, and if you would like to recycle that fiber, right? Ultimately, it comes down to this. Whenever there's a narcissistic person in your life, you're the one that invited that person into your life. Whether you did it consciously or subconsciously, there is something there that is serving a part of you. Usually wherever we're codependent, wherever we're operating in false guilt, wherever we have something against ourselves at a deeper level, it's going to be mirrored by what we're allowing in our life and by what we're promoting in our life or agreeing with in our life. And so we have to hold others accountable, but we also have to first deal with what is it in us that feels like it's serving a purpose in our life. Maybe feeding a negative belief about ourselves that we're determined to believe, and therefore we stay in that situation subconsciously. So realizing that most of our subconscious beliefs is what runs our life. Okay, the emotional, experiential thought form at a subconscious level is what is running the show. And that's why a lot of times we're saying consciously, I don't want to be in this situation, but we can't get out of it. And yet the situation at a subconscious level is serving another part of us that believes we either deserve to be there, or that we have to prove ourselves in some way to ourselves to measure up. And so I always say, go there first and check yourself and see what you are mirroring that is causing you to stay in a relationship that is disrespectful. And sometimes changing that might actually change the mirror reflection outward. I've seen that happen. It's not always the case. It's not, everything isn't always you exactly, in that sense of mirroring your own issues as somebody else's actions. I think we can use that to a degree, but I also think that other people need to be responsible for their own shit. And so that's where the other side comes in. So part of it is check yourself. Why are you in this relationship? Because even if that person changed, or didn't change, how would that affect whether you would leave the relationship or be in the relationship? So I know a lot of people that stay in narcissistic relationships because it is serving their own narcissism at one level, and realizing that narcissism, and I want to read you something here, isn't just the way we have seen it. There is a giving and a receiving side of narcissism as well. Okay. All right. So let me see if I can find this. So basically, narcissism is an external pursuit of validation that can be driven by insecurity. People with narcissistic personality disorder may have distorted self-esteem, viewing themselves in an overly inflated way. They may also cope with insecurities by flexing, which can make others look like them less and further aggravate their insecurities. Now, so in that beginning, I said narcissism is an external pursuit of validation. So sometimes being narcissistic is to, in that aspect, always be looking for somebody else to validate us. And we're so desperate in that outside validation that we put ourselves in a situation of subjecting ourselves to a narcissist that is overly thinking they're better and demanding that everybody serve them, and not ever apologizing when they're mean or disrespectful or so on and so forth. So you can have the introverted narcissist, you can have the extroverted narcissist, one that is outwardly inflated and one that is just seeking approval by putting itself under that. Both can be narcissism. What I find in relationships and in over, well, close to 40 years now of counseling and life coaching in relationships, the one thing I've seen most common is that but when one says, well, my husband or my wife has this trigger, they're doing this, and we sit down together, they both actually have the same trigger. It's just coming from opposite directions. It's the same mindset that's heading up against itself, because there's a denial somewhere in the subconscious where we will not face ourselves. And so because we won't face ourselves, or we don't know how to face ourselves because of the block between subconscious dialogue and conscious escapisms, okay, to try to confess and repress, because we have this disconnect, we're constantly needing outward mirrored reflections to bring consequences so that we can begin to align the internal dialogue. And so what I would encourage, if you're in this, is, again, deal with your own stuff that might be mirroring it, that might find out why you're in this relationship and why it is serving you emotionally at a lower level. Maybe it's because you don't believe you're good enough and you put yourself in a place to be disrespected. Okay. And after you've done that, and you're going to make a decision, you're either going to be the point of contact that helps the other person shift, because you're no longer feeding that, and they either have to decide to change or leave the relationship, or you've already decided, once you wake up to that this relationship is done, because I'm done disrespecting myself by allowing another to disrespect me. So again, we want to have grace in the sense of making sure that it isn't our own lens projecting something to validate the wrong kind of to validate our own invalidation by projecting on others that it's all one-sided. We want to make sure that we've searched our own heart first, and in that posture, in a non-judgment towards ourself kind of way, we can now kind of see the other person and have the right kind of compassion, without it being pity, in which we're sucked in and again taken for another ride. I hope that answered some of your questions, and Good luck. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you later.